Welcome back to Constructive Conversations. I'm Craig Larkins. Today, we're talking about a crisis that's hitting our province and industry hard: mental health, substance abuse, and pain management. Since 2016, we've lost 16,000 people in BC to the toxic drug crisis, and more than half worked in construction or trades. Most were men. Many were dealing with mental health challenges. That's why today's guests, Olcen and Greg Heminger, are here. They are program coordinators at Tailgate Toolkit, a program helping crews and employers start real conversations and get the support they need. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us, Craig.
So stoked to be here.
So I wanted to dive in, Rose, first question. Let's start at the beginning. For those who aren't familiar with the program, what exactly is the Tailgate Toolkit and how did it come about?
So Tailgate Toolkit is a nonprofit organization that provides free education about mental health, substance use, and pain management, and shows and talks about the impact that it's had on the construction and trades industry, pretty much bridging that gap between employer and employee, giving them the resources and the information they need to properly adapt and be able to work with and alongside all types of people in this beautiful country, this beautiful province. We come onto site or virtual and do toolbox talks. We do hands-on naloxone, Narcan training. We are launching a leadership fundamentals program that's going to be amazing. And then also region-specific based resources all over the province, all about mental health, substance use, grief, counseling, all types of things that all different types of crews and workers, leadership and coworkers might need to get through this crisis together.
So, Greg, from your perspective, besides the obvious, besides the numbers I just talked about, why was there such an urgent need for a program like this in construction?
You know what? Before I get into that, I will say something about the numbers that you stated earlier. As alarming as those numbers are on their head, they're actually worse than they appear. Because what those numbers don't take into account is how many people have now found themselves in a homelessness situation on the streets or unemployed, who have kind of fallen out of those fields that you speak of, construction, trades, and transport, whether that's because of workplace injury, whether that's because of the stigma involved. Maybe they have, a mental health crisis of sorts, but it is such a male-dominated industry, and as men, as you know, we've always been encouraged that our strength lies in our ability to internalize our feelings, right? To be strong and proud and that stiff upper lip, walk it off, suck it up. And I can tell you right now, we have failed our kids teaching them these lessons, because the ability to step up and say, hey, I'm not okay, is the most courageous thing a person can ever do. Throughout history, when we look at great leaders, they are the people who went against like upstream, against the fray. When everyone was zigging, they would zag. And in a time when no one wants to talk about the struggle, whether it's financial, whether it's pain, whether it's mental health, it is such a courageous thing to step up and say, I need help. And in doing that, you're also creating relationships. I was lucky enough to, before I go too far, I'll just let everyone know that I'm 7.5 years removed from my own opioid addiction. I am very lucky to be here. I've clinically died 3 times, and my recovery is the product of tremendous people at every step of the way, who, when I actually had the courage and I became desperate enough to step up and I said, I need help, they helped. And in doing so, we fortified these lifelong bonds, because I really don't think you can accomplish love in this world, in a relationship, without being vulnerable. And the people that I gave my vulnerability to, they protected it and supported me throughout. And now a big part of the Tailgate Toolkit is supplying that same support to others to step up and say, hey, I'm not okay. And I know I've done 300 talks over, I think I'm the senior person now at the Tailgate Toolkit, and I've done numerous talks. I'm educated. I facilitated groups with men with mental health and addiction issues for years before that. Yet, as I sit here today, Craig, and I talk to you about this issue, my mouth is going dry. Because I instantly feel dirty or less than, because I'm a recovering opioid addict. And if it's that hard for someone like me right now, after all this practice, how hard is it for your regular guy working 40 or 50 hours on the construction site to go to their supervisor who they fear may punish them and be vulnerable enough to say, I'm not okay and I need support. And that's why this program matters, because we need to change the culture immediately.
Thank you for sharing, Greg. And I think one question, I have is, how do we get there? How do we, in your opinion, break down those barriers, even that feeling you're feeling now? How do we take that away from a conversation or a group setting or a work site or something along that lines?
I don't know if Rose would agree with this, but I think we're doing it right now because we're normalizing the conversation. And we're not broken. I don't need to feel this way. In truth, I've accomplished a few things in my life before I burnt it all down, but none of them I should be more proud of than the fact that I managed to find recovery. And that's why it's so important to get harm reduction to people as well. Because my journey in recovery wasn't as simple as me just stepping up and being strong and manning up. No. It was about utilizing harm reduction mechanisms that made that journey easier and accomplishing little wins. And too often, harm reduction and recovery seem to be at odds, at least those two communities, when really they should be aiding one another. And something I always say is harm reduction is not a safety net. It can be a trampoline. It can be a trampoline to get you to that place of recovery when you can start repairing those relationships. And it is of the utmost important that we get out and we change that culture, start the conversation and breaking down those barriers between employer and employee so people feel like they're in a safe space where they can recognize that, hey, this isn't easy work. Our bodies are deteriorating, right? And we need help. And I've talked to so many men in treatment centers now as well. And I asked for a show of hands out of a group of usually around 50. How many of you come from trades, construction, or transport? Every time, north of 40 hands go up. And people talk to me about how maybe the hardest thing above the physical pain was they were very proud of the fact that they could be the earner in their family. And their masculinity and their manhood and their worth as a human being really lied with that ability to provide for their family. And when their bodies deteriorated and they couldn't do that for their family, they used, not just to heal pain, but opioids as a way to deal with the emotional kind of conflict because they had lost their identity and worth and they didn't know who they are. And I'll shut up because I'm very long-winded and Rose has
You do not have to shut up.
But I will say this. When people ask me, do you miss getting high or do you miss the party? It was never a party. It wasn't about getting high after the first time. What it was the pursuit of nothingness, right? Because as my addiction got worse, I started realizing that all my values, my moral fiber, or whatever you want to call it, the things you hold near and dear, the things you would never do because I am an honest person and I wouldn't take from someone, and all these things that are the last things you cling to as a human being or as a man, when those values start being decaying and now you realize that your values and your actions are incongruent, that's when you start this process of self-loathing. And when I got to that place of self-loathing, I no longer cared about my health or whether I lived or I died. And that's a very scary place. And the other thing we understate is, as much as those numbers are really eye-opening, I can't tell you how many people's lives I made decidedly worse because I was in that place. And how many people in our industry, maybe they're not afflicted right now, but they have a loved one, a son, a wife, a husband, a brother, a roommate who is going through it. And they show up for work at 7 a.m. after staying up all night waiting, unfortunately, for that phone call where they get that dreaded news. As my parents said, they had to psychologically, mentally prepare for the inevitability of my demise. And I hate that I did that to them. However, my recovery has made decidedly a positive impression on many people's lives, and they have a better life now, and the people around me, I'd like to think they have benefited from this journey. But we need to look at the tentacles and the nuance of this crisis and how it affects us all in life, not just as an addict or someone afflicted, but the downward stream effect as well.
That ripple effect, we just did an episode with Movember, and we were talking about the impacts on just health in general, physical health and mental health. So I want to stay on this conversation, Greg, because first of all, thank you for sharing. What does it feel like walking into a room and sharing your story, or even hearing from someone that your story may have helped them even take a couple steps towards their recovery, or they did reach out to harm reduction. What does that feel like to you?
It is, I used to write and direct film, and I used to say the greatest joy I ever had in my life was having a thought in my head that I created and cultivated and put down into paper on a screenplay and then shot on film. And the highlight was watching it come together, sitting next to an editor and seeing it come to life. I never felt joy and accomplishment and purpose like that in my life until I had people in talks who, at the start of every talk, I don't want to get derailed, I asked people, how many of you have been affected directly or even indirectly by this opioid crisis? Positive news report, it's now about 50% of the room. It used to be about 10%. However, after I spill my guts and tell my story and spend 45 minutes to an hour with the group, there's always 5 to 10 people who wait till the room clears out and they'll come talk to me privately. And to a man or woman, every one of them hadn't put up their hand when I'd asked that question at the start of the talk. And they let me know that my story had resonated with them and that it had made them think and want to move forward in a positive direction or help someone that they know and love. That purposeful work means I'm not working at all. I'm living in my purpose. And it's the greatest thing I've ever accomplished in my life. It is humbling to know that, and I'll finish with this because I'm hogging time and I feel really bad about it, but I spent 6 years, the first 6 years of my addiction, using copious amounts of Oxycontin every day. That was prescribed. Initially, I had no idea what Oxycontin was when I got addicted. I should state that as well. Scariest moment in my life was a year and a half in when a friend pointed out I was taking synthetic heroin and my heart dropped. I thought I was taking no different than an anti-inflammatory. However, my partner, who I shared my whole life with, didn't know I was taking pills to that extent. None of my friends, my parents, my family, even my drug dealer thought I was getting them for someone else because I seemingly had my shit together because I was a filmmaker who had decent employment. So the beautiful irony that something that I almost died from the stress of protecting, this secret life I was living and dying with, is now to use. It's being put to good use. And the very thing I almost died trying to protect is now I'm getting paid to share. And there's beauty in that. And in doing so, you asked the question you asked it before I went on this long rant was, what has it been like getting that type of affirmation and feedback? And I can tell you this, the affirmation and feedback and the want to dig deeper and be more and more honest to try to get through to people has led to a lot of self-discovery personally that has been rewarding. And I've done every type of treatment, and I've done AA and NA and therapy and everything you can do. I don't think there's anything that has resonated more and done more for my recovery than this job unintentionally.
Wow.
It has really done so much to teach me about who I am, where I was flawed. I really didn't realize that I had a lot of flaws way before the drug situation started, right? And they are only exacerbated by addiction, taking shortcuts, right? I always exploited my strengths and ignored my weakness. Well, when you get into addiction, right, your weaknesses get exploited really quickly. And those bad habits become full-on crises. And I had to dig down and be honest. And I couldn't cut corners, and I had to get deeper. And I had to ask for help, which was the hardest thing I'd ever had to do. And I think me and Rose can agree on that. We are trying to make it easier, she said, to make that bridge so people can ask for help and make sure it's a safe place.
It seems like it's such a simple thing when you say it, but the reality of it is it's so hard, and it's such a mind. You psych yourself out so much with it. So I hope you know the strength in even just sharing your story now, but going to communities, to sites and sharing your story, because that's strength. And you said something just now about living my purpose. That is so beautiful. That is quite possibly one of the beautiful things I've heard in a very long time. So thank you very much, Greg. I wanted to switch gears to Rose here. And, you've been out in the field delivering the program. What's the response been like from your perspective, from employers, from the crew? Are there any stories that you can share that have really stuck with you after being on site and meeting teams and supervisors?
Absolutely. So when I began this awesome journey with Tailgate Toolkit, I was kind of worried about the backlash and the response I would get from construction and trades, because they have that reputation of being tough and not talking about their feelings. But rumor has it more men have more than one feeling, which is excellent. And walking onto site, I expected more resistance, more fight, more of a no, we don't need that. No one on our site has a problem. But honestly, when bringing the evidence and the facts to the table, to supervisors, to leadership, even to guys on the ground, they go, oh, okay, let's chat about it. Tell me what you know. And we share. And we talk about what's happening in an industry, specifically to men in the industry, to women in the industry, and what it does. And how it's turning out. And when we give those facts and give that evidence and show proof, the guys are like, okay, this is what do we do now? They ask us the next step. They're open to hearing the next step and wondering how they can better understand and participate with their own crews. One story that really resonates with me and I still think about to this day, December 5th, 2024, I went over to the island and did a great talk with Don Man Construction in Victoria. It was about 60 to 70 guys, and it was incredible. I'm up there, I'm giving a speech, and it was wonderful. About a month and a half later, I got an email from the manager who had brought me over, and they were still having conversations on site about that talk. And so why I do what I do, because a
Mm-hmm.
month later, where guys are still open and brave enough and feeling confident in themselves to be like, okay, let's support, and knowing that they're doing something towards their community, towards their teams, their own families and friends, knowing that a man or a woman's our own mental health affects those around us, and on work sites and at home. So why not be there? So I think that um, seeing that success and seeing that guys like, okay, we can do this. We can do this together. They're thinking about how strong and efficient our construction industry would be if each man or woman was there for one other person. How
Uh-huh.
tight and how just strong we would be, solid.
I think it goes back to even like, the language we use, like even you just saying together, maybe even someone just hearing that one word makes them feel like they're not alone. And that
Absolutely.
lends them that confidence to come up to you and pull you aside at the end of a session. So there's one thing you talked about. I heard it this morning. We had a member meet up here at the VRCA, and Rose does an amazing job of capturing the room's attention.
She's great at that.
But talking about the program, and you said this is the first time, I wrote it down, there's 5 generations of trades right now. So can you
Indeed.
just break that down and explain that all over again for us?
For sure.
Please do.
So
I'm not familiar with this. I am
Yeah, it's an
maybe
interesting fact.
a really great thing I learned right away off the bat is, for the first time in history, we have 5 generations of tradesmen and women working at the same time together on the floor, on the ground. And that is 5 generations of different views on mental health, substance use, recovery, walking on site, the culture, everything. So what do we have to do? The guys who are 20 years old and coming on site want the construction culture to adapt to them, to change to them right now. But the guys who've been here for 60 years have been here for 60 years. The wisdom and knowledge they hold in their brains and on their spirit means something. So how do we adapt? How do we gather all that awesome intel from the old, adapt
Yes.
and create and teach the new, but also meet in the middle and nail it and be there for each other, not only just to build our world together, but legitimately be there physically, mentally, emotionally, workingly together to just be efficient, strong, solid, and adaptable together as a industry.
My favorite talks, and I'm going up to do one tomorrow. I go all the way up to Pemberton and then up to Mount Currie, where you're out of service, gravel roads, and then over to Whistler. And it's a great company, Murphy Construction. And they have all indigenous crews. And I'll be honest, the first time I went up, I was a bit nervous. I'm like, oh, they're going to look at this fat-faced, blue-eyed white boy and be like, what do you know? Like, get out of here, loser, right? However, they're so disarming and beautiful and kind and just funny. And I remember the first talk. We actually we're just like standing basically on a site. There's no infrastructure, no like table, chairs or anything. We just all sat down in the gravel like some old hippies at Woodstock and talked. And I did my hour and then another hour and a half just talking about life and mental health. And a couple things dawned on me. First one was, this is the best talk I've ever done. I wish I could bottle this feeling. Number two was, I've never seen a group of people so committed to self-improvement. Number three was, every time I shared about my story, I really encouraged kind of a discourse so people feel free to jump in when they want. And the older gentlemen and the crew would kind of elaborate on what I was speaking of. They've had similar experiences. And the look in the eyes and the active listening of these 19 and 20-year-old boys, they're all boys in this, so I guess men now. And just the reverence they had and the respect they had for the knowledge being passed down. And when Rose talks about that, it makes me think about how experience in that 5 generations on site is such a currency. And I think we've gone away from that too much in westernized society, where it's like, okay, whatever, boomer. And instead of forgiving people for yeah, times are different and they're ignorant to things. But you know what? That bridge that Rose speaks of, it's like that younger generation can be the bridge, right? And you can get so much from that older generation and bridge them into the new generation too, and make them more understanding. Because I've had 65-year-old people come in after talks at LEDCORE specifically, and they actually wrote letters about it. And when we'll do follow-ups and polls and whatnot, and talked about I was under the assumption that addiction was just born out of selfishness. I had no idea that people could find it, and it was such a torturous, lonely place that really it wasn't about addiction and the party. It was about dependence, and it really opened their eyes. One last thing, I'll shut for a long time. I've had the great pleasure of, when I was about a year into my recovery, I started going to a men's support group. And it's Maple Ridge Treatment Center support group. And it's people that all been through Maple Ridge Treatment Center. And it was the alumni that put it on. But anyone was welcome. So we would go into the treatment center once a week, and then we would go to a one-way, or a public place, a gathering place, a one-way club they're called, and do a second meeting there. Also, the BC Lions give us tickets and stuff. So we would take guys from the treatment center out to football games and Vancouver Giant games, to show them recovery isn't about losing something. It's about gaining so much. You can do all these things that you've lost and have such a full life. Because I can tell you right now, if recovery was just about whining about, I can't do this anymore in a coffee shop to someone my entire life, I would still be out there getting high. But that's not what it is. It's enabled me to be a father, a friend, and just the best human ever, and show up for everyone in my life. However, these men in this group have the strongest bonds and friendships I've ever seen. They love each other. And what made me so attracted to this group was, I've never seen men so happy for another person's achievement. Someone else had success from that group, they were way more, they had way more joy than they would for their own success. After a couple of years, I got asked to be a facilitator and running the group myself, which was a huge honor. And it really became apparent to me that men of different generations, different religious backgrounds, sexual orientations, whatever it is, couldn't be more different. And we magnify all the things that separate us in society, but they loved each other unconditionally. Because while they may not have cheered for the same sport team or believed in the same God, they had shared vulnerability, again with one another, and had solidified relationships. And they had commonality because we've all had our heart broken. We've all failed. We've all felt fear. And we've all had times where we don't compartmentalize with our feelings, and we use a substitute to feel unnaturally, life on life's terms. We've all cheated that from time to time. And that openness has created such beautiful relationships and love in every one of their lives. And it's really an addictive thing. And I guess I am a little bit of a dreamer, and I have this utopic view, but I would just love for a construction site to look a little bit like that.
That's a good dream. That is a good dream to have or wish for. And I was saying...
Sorry, Martin Luther King, for a cheap name that I have a dream thing.
I was saying in the Movember interview I did previously, if we take away the word man or woman or men and women, we're talking about brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and cousins and nephews and the people that you care about. So maybe if it's easier to kind of go to that realm of thinking, do it and see how you feel differently. And Rose, you were saying also this morning during our member meetup, a lot of people may seem fine on site, but a lot of people are taking home whatever they're dealing with and access to whatever substance they're using, and it's not something that you would see necessarily on site.
Right.
Do you want to unpack that a bit more?
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, we spend a lot of times with our guys on site every day. A lot of our men and women on site spend a lot of time with their coworkers more than their friends and family most days. And we're average people that we're losing right now are guys who are working 9 to 5. So, I mean, your average man going to work, dealing with work, doing his work job. He's in there, he's doing his thing, but also on his mind too. He's thinking about, the financial. He's thinking about his kids. He might be thinking about his wife. Maybe he just learned that one of his kids is sick. Maybe he needs to come up with a bunch of money for glasses. Like, he might just not have his head fully in the game. He goes home. He's got to do a bunch of stuff. He might be using a little something to deal with a mental health disorder. Maybe he's been in pain. Maybe he got injured today. Maybe he's doing. And what people don't remember is that we're human and that we all deal with things differently. Even the positive and negative emotions, happiness, sadness, jealousy, anger, excitement, we all deal with them and do our human things differently and uniquely. So maybe some guys are going home. They're going home and they're using a little substance to get through their day just so they can breathe for a moment after thinking about finances and the economy and the South and all this other stuff too. And there's so much going on in the world right now. It's overwhelming. It's a lot to follow. You don't want to be a part of anything because it's too much, but you have to know what's going on. People deal with their things differently, and using substances is one thing. Alcohol, substances, marijuana, cigarettes, anything like that. And what people remember is that, the weekend warriors, for instance, they're using cocaine once every 8 months. That one time they use, and that's the one time it's laced with a little bit more fentanyl, and no one knows what to do. No one knows what to say. No one knows how to act. So
where do we go from here? Like, if I'm a construction employer listening right now and thinking, not necessarily pinpointing someone, but we need this in general after hearing this, what's the first step? How does a site supervisor reach out to you? How does someone just on site, where do we go?
Well, I mean, you could connect with the VRCA because both Greg and I are out of the VRCA office. Our information and our office is here. Our website, the tailgatetoolkit.ca, has all the things you need, the resources we give out, also 2 resources for mental health, pain, substance use, all on website. We do have awesome emails that we can contact with, and all you have to do is contact us and tell us that you want us to come do a presentation. A toolbox talk usually goes from 30 to 45 minutes, depending on participation. And that's the first step, is just reaching out and saying, hey, just give us the information. What all the education we provide is free, but what the information the guys do with what we've said is how they roll with it. So the first step would just be to contact your nearest friendly neighborhood community support worker and start the talk and just get the conversation going and on site, because that's the first step to greatness.
Do you tailor resources for the size of the company? So if you have a small subcontractor or might have very different needs than a large general contractor, is that something that also in reaching out? Yeah, I see you have an answer. So yes.
I do. I love, that's one thing that Greg and I and Mika and Alex and Emily are great for. We are made to tailor and adapt to different companies. Location, kind of trade, how many people, age of trade, gender, culture, whatever you need. We have resources online too. But if a company wanted something specific, Greg and I and our other coworkers would go out of our way to find the resources that a company needed specifically. If we didn't have it on our site, we'll put it on our site after that, because the knowledge is power, and the more knowledge and resources the guys are aware of in their communities, the better they are prepared going forward.
When you have people doing it for the right reasons, it matters. And we absolutely tailor our presentations. And you can ask Rose, if people call right now and say, we need you at 8:30 in the morning, between the two of us, we'll make it. I may be in Pemberton, but that means Rose is going to step up. And this woman calls me every day, anything I can do for you. That type of relationships, those type of relationships. We're not selling anything. It's free. All our services are free. The supervisor training, and we have Pain BC come in. We have labor lawyers come in to speak. We have professors of Indigenous studies, department heads, all these professionals doing this for free. And all it takes is a bit of timing Like your
Yeah.
shirt says, curiosity.
So I have one final question for both of you, and I'll start with Rose. What's your hope for the future if we fast forwarded 5 years, 4 years, 2 years? What is your hope? What do you see? I don't really want to use the word success, but what is your hope in 5 years?
Well, I mean, the reason why this program is a thing and why it's a thing is kind of like a two-sided sword. Our program exists because men and women are struggling in this world. I don't want to have a job because people are struggling and that I have to provide this. But at the same time, though, 5 years from now, I'm hoping that workplaces are continuing to refresh with Tailgate Toolkit, just get continuous talks with new employment. I'd love to see employers and leadership make some sort of plans with their own crews of what they could do in times of crisis, whether it's a physical crisis, a mental crisis, or emotional crisis. The employers, one of the reasons why we have a job is because guys want employers to step in, but employers don't know how. I would love to teach employers how to step in and what to say and what to do, how to point, where to go. Communication and education is power. I'd love to just take this Tailgate Toolkit to the next level and just keep providing support, knowing that there is light at the end of the tunnel. No one is alone. No one has to struggle alone. And there is people and ways out there. There's a light, and it's totally available to anyone who wants it.
Perfectly said, Rose. Same question for you, my friend Greg. What's your hope for the future?
My hope is that when I get a call asking me to come do a talk, it's happening before a tragedy has occurred, right? And we're maintaining a status quo of healthy transparency within organizations. My second goal, a little more nuanced, but as you both know, we live in, and even I'm at the tail end of it, I'm a bit older than I think both of you, but we are a culture of immediacy, right? Everything is on demand at our fingertips. You know, I no longer have to buy a TV guide on Monday to read the synopsis of what Dylan McKay does on 90210 on Wednesday night. However, pain cannot be treated with that impatience. There's a process, and we need to educate people more how to deal with chronic pain and mental health issues. So everyone is very open and everyone knows what is available to them. When Pain BC becomes a household name, they should be paying me the amount I advertise them, but it's such a great service and it's the biggest of its kind in the world, and not many people are aware of it. And, you know, the cost of living is not going to go down, right? And with it, mental health and stress rates are going to rise. To combat that stress, people will lean on substances, unfortunately. I would like to see harm reduction resources of all kinds normalized, right? I'd love a safe supply. And I would love naloxone kits on all sites. And most importantly, I would love to have peer-led intervention, people with lived experience made available at every company to talk to people in a private place where the anonymity is respected, where they can talk to someone who has been through it. I'll leave you, and this will be my last kind of diatribe for this podcast, I imagine. In the depths of my addiction, I would ask people in my circle, and it was a pretty sorry circle, do you know anyone who's used the amount of drugs that I'm using in the manner in which I'm using them, the type that I'm using, and 127 pounds like me, who's come out the other side in one piece? And no one could point to someone directly. And that fertilized a hopelessness inside of me. And having a peer there who has been through that storm, who can take you by the hand and put a flashlight on the trail and say, hey, you're here right now, but we can go here, 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 and here, right? And get you these supports. It's not as complicated because it's daunting, especially when you're really sick, when you have to jump through so many hoops. Every person in addiction, the most important thing you'll hear in this talk out of my mouth anyways, has on average 9 minutes a day of realization and willingness to get the help that they so desperately need. logistically, it's almost an impossibility to get them that help in that 9 minutes. So I just want to make that help more readily available, to plug those gaps in care so people don't fall through those cracks. Get people straight from that job site that day into a detox center. And when they leave that detox center that day, they go straight to a treatment center. And the day they leave that treatment center, maybe second stage or whatever they decide, but there can't be these gaps in care, because phenomenal individuals who plug those gaps in my early recovery are the reason why I'm talking to you today. And I wish I could thank them all by name, because I love them so much.
Thank you both for sharing, for being here today. And thank you for the work you're doing. I think it's so vitally important. The Tailgate Toolkit program is such a powerful resource for the industry and for people looking for support and help now more than ever. What's the website, Rose?
www.thetailgatetoolkit.ca.
Thank you both again for joining us. And of course, thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please share it. Don't forget to subscribe and share it with your network. And coming up, actually, on Constructive Conversations, we're going to be talking about the Bring Trades to School program, a really cool initiative here at the VRCA where we get the youth on the tools. We head into the schools. Big event coming up in October with our friends at Home Depot. We're looking at possibly getting 200 youth and introducing them to carpentry, to electricians, and all the work that we do in the industry. And remember, it all starts with construction. I'm Craig Larkins. Thank you for joining us today on Constructive Conversations. This episode is brought to you by Pitt Meadows Plumbing, building iconic projects and elevating the industry through strong teams, partnerships, and advocacy.